California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and here we are on this spectacular day on Point Loma in San Diego. We're at the Cabrillo National Monument, and boy is this place packed with history. For example, it was just right out here in this area that back in 1542, the explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo first set foot in what is today California. And right up there on that point is a wonderful old 1854 lighthouse. Lots of history here. There's also a lot of natural wonders of beauty here. And that's what we're going to be doing on this particular adventure. We're going to be spending the whole day right down here basically on the point where the water meets the shore in search of a natural wonder that most of the time is completely hidden from human view. But when it does reveal itself with all of its wonders, it's definitely a fine example of California's gold. We are at the shore, and a beautiful shore it is, and I set this whole thing up by saying that we were going to be spending a day looking for something that most of the time is hidden from our view. Was I correct in saying that?
That's correct, Huell.
Okay, we're here. Introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm Mary Elaine Dunaway, and I'm a biologist with the U.S. Department of the Interior, Minerals Management.
Oh, that's a long title. And your name?
I'm Jack Engel, and I'm at UC Santa Barbara, and I'm also the coordinator for the Intertidal Network.
The Intertidal Network, and I have a feeling that has something to do with where we are right now. Tell everybody where we are. I know we're at Cabrillo National Monument, but specifically, where are we going to be spending the day today?
We're going to be monitoring the southernmost marine site, and marine is the multi-agency Rocky Intertidal Network, and Cabrillo National Monument is our southernmost marine site. We have sites all up and down the coast, 55 of them, including all of the offshore islands.
And what are we looking at right now? What's going on down here?
We are in the tide pools counting various different kinds of plants and animals that live down there.
The tide pools, that's what is hidden most of the time, or a lot of the time, from our view. Now let's just take a look out here. Is this whole area here a tide pool?
This is a rocky shoreline, and there are tide pools all throughout here, but we're interested also in the plants and animals that live anywhere on the rocks.
Okay, now there are tide pools all up and down the coast of California, right?
That's right, all dotted up and down the coast.
It's not just a Southern California thing or a Central California thing. It covers the whole length of the coast.
That is right. There's a lot of rocky shores in California.
Okay, and whenever you find rocks, you find tide pools? What's the definition of a tide pool?
A tide pool specifically is a pool of water that's left behind when the tide goes out. So we come here at low tide. The entire area is called the intertidal, between the high and low, and the pools are the pools of water. But there's marine life throughout the shore.
All right, we are here at low tide, and we've got to get going, because in order to see these tide pools and move around in them, we have to do it during low tide, don't we?
That's correct. Our work is governed by the low tides.
All right, let's take a look at this. This is where we're heading right now, down to the shore. And we're going to get right in the middle of these tide pools. Okay, the adventure begins, and here is a hole in the rock that is full of water. Now, usually the tide is up over all of these rocks, right?
At high tide, we would be standing in water, and this is all covered. So we found our first tide pool.
Tide pool. Now, there's a pool. What's in there?
There are different zones of life in the intertidal, and this one is up pretty high, so there's not as much life, but I see some sea anemones along the side and some, this is actually red coralline algae. It's a type of plant.
All of this stuff right here.
Yes, this is an actual marine plant. There's rocks in here, and so it's a little more disturbed. There will be fish hidden in the crevices of the rocks.
So when we look at tide pools, we really have to look. That's the whole secret. You got to get right down in it and almost know what you're looking for.
That's right. That's right. There are hundreds of species of plants and animals in tide pools and in the intertidal.
Because, see, I got to tell you, if I was just walking by here and I looked down here at this, I would just say it was a kind of a puddle of water full of rocks.
The more you look and the more you know what to look for, the more exciting it gets.
All right, now these people over here look like they know what they're doing over here. What are you doing over here?
We're taking what we call a photo plot. Basically, we're measuring all of the plants and animals in that rectangle. So we take a photograph of the same rock year after year.
Right here?
Right here.
How do you know you're coming back to exactly the same spot?
See, we have these little stainless steel bolts here, and they mark all the corners of the plot.
So each one has a number, and you take a picture, and what? What do you do with the picture once you take it?
We take the picture, and then we count what's underneath every 100 evenly spaced points. So I have a sheet for you that shows you what that looks like.
Oh, wow, this is very complicated here. These are 4 quadrants you've got here.
That just helps us keep our place.
And is this the way it looked when?
This is the way that photo looked 7 years ago.
So how much has it changed in 7 years?
Actually, Bonnie would be the best person to talk about that because this is her site.
Oh, okay. What do you do? You're just the photographer.
I'm just taking pictures of this site today, yeah.
And how exciting is it for you to take a picture of
Well, I do this as well. I'm with UCLA. And I'm responsible for a set of sites that are further up the coast from Santa Barbara down to Los Angeles.
I got you.
And so I do the same exact thing at 11 sites that are up in that
So you're
direction.
going up and down the coast just like this. Boy, this is beautiful out here. What a great job you've got.
It is a good job. It's nice to get out in the sun and the wind, and then, but yeah, we have 11 sites, and we have to time it to on the days where there's good low tides.
Now, do you take pictures just up here, or are you going to go all the way out there and take some pictures as well?
We have everywhere that you see one of these little quadrats laid out here is a place where we have a plot, and every one of those spots has the little bolts that mark where that plot has to sit, so we know to get back to that same exact spot every year. And so we'll go and take photos of all of these every time.
Never heard of anything like this. And how are the tide pools doing? How are they changing over the years? Getting better, getting worse, getting more life, less life?
Well, it depends on what you're looking at and at what site. So here at Cabrillo, we've seen a dramatic decline in our mussel population. So our mussels have really dropped, but our limpets are actually quite huge here.
Okay, now we're heading into the, what is this? This is the, what is this?
This is the surfgrass that I mentioned. This surfgrass is a true flowering plant. Most of the intertidal plants are marine algae, red, brown, or red, but this is a true flowering plant that produces small flowers, and it's related to the grasses that you would see on your lawn.
Can I touch this?
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes,
it's okay
it's fine.
when you visit?
Yes.
It's okay to touch this? Oh, wow, what an interesting...
It's a very productive seagrass, and in fact, this is an important nursery habitat for the California lobster. The juvenile lobsters live in the surfgrass that's in not only the intertidal, but more out in the shallow subtidal, the slightly deeper water.
Surfgrass. I've never heard of this before. Now, something's going on over here. What's going on over here?
Hi, we're doing turf transects.
You're doing what?
Turf transects.
Turf transects. What does that mean?
Well, that means we've spread out a 10-meter line here, and there are 3 bolts, north, middle, and south, and we come back to these same places twice a year to measure what's growing.
Oh, so you're doing kind of the same thing the guy was doing up there with his camera.
Exactly.
Only you're eyeballing it.
That's right. And so Michelle is doing the actual reading, and I'm doing the recording on our data sheet.
Now, what are you looking for? There's just a lot of surf grass here.
Oh, there's lots more than surf grass here. For instance, this one right here, this alga, it's called Plocamium. See how beautiful that is, the feathery parts of it? So what we're doing is we're going by and we're scoring, like we have ulva or sea lettuce. A lot of people call it sea lettuce. And we have our surf grass. We have some reds here.
Wow.
This is a red alga. So we go through and we identify each one at each point. That way we don't just say, oh, there's a whole bunch of surf grass here.
So there's a veritable, look down here. There are probably 5 or 6 or 7 different types of plants down here.
Oh, at least we have codes for about 15 or 20 of them.
In just this area right here.
That's right. We have a beautiful one right here called boa kelp or agresia. Looks like a feather boa, right?
Look at this.
You want to go out on the town, you can just wrap this around.
Look at this.
It's quite large.
And look at it out here. Now, you can't, does the low tide ever really leave this dry, or is it always kind of like it is right now?
It'll definitely get lower than this.
Yeah, at a very low tide, this whole area could be exposed to the air.
So you'll walk out in this whole area here?
Yes, and get wet, tromp around, look for stuff.
Look at this out here. This is beautiful out here.
One of our grass transects is laid out over there.
Yeah.
So we have them at different distances from the shore as well.
Now, why is it important that we keep this surf grass? Oh, see, I got on my boots. There was a reason why I've got these things on.
Excellent.
The tide is coming in. Why is it important that we know about this surf grass and how it's doing?
Well, it's just important, I think in general, for any location on the planet to be familiar with all of the diversity that lives there. California, Southern California especially, is known as a diversity hotspot. And there are only a number of places in the world that have this many different animals and plants living in it around the world. And so it's so important for us as scientists to learn what all these things are, how long they stay in a certain area, how well they do in different climates. It's just really important.
See, I'm guilty of just being one of these guys who would have been tromping around here not knowing what the heck I was getting into.
Well, actually, that's another thing we're trying to study right now, is see how the trampling of everyone walking around with those big boots, what size is that? That's pretty large, right?
About 12.
So those 12s are walking around this tide pool and they're trampling and actually damaging some of the species in this area. So this study helps us determine how much of an effect that is making on our tide pools.
Are you asking me to leave?
No, I'm just asking you to walk just on your tippy toes. That way you try and be very careful in this area.
Yeah, because that's the balance, is how do you get people to come in here and enjoy it and at the same time respect it.
Exactly. We just need people to be very gentle.
We have left the surf grass and now we're looking at another kind of grass. What are we looking at?
Well, we're looking at rockweed.
Rockweed?
Rockweed. This is a seaweed that belongs to the brown group. It's very abundant on shores that receive moderate amount of wave action. This is a plant that is very important in the intertidal zone because when the tide is out, as you can see now, and things get rather warm and dry, this seaweed provides protection for a lot of the invertebrates. We've done a number of studies recently on rockweed, and we have found some interesting things. First, that there are more than 100 invertebrates that will actually be found beneath the rockweed canopy.
That call it home.
That call it home. And without that canopy, home gets real hot, warm, dry, and not a very nice place to be.
Isn't that interesting how it's all interconnected?
It is, it is. Another thing that's interesting about this rockweed is that this seaweed is very susceptible to people walking on it. When people step on this seaweed, branches get broken and the canopy gets smaller and smaller.
Oh, wow.
So this is a problem. It's an area, and it's one of those challenges really for folks who are trying to manage the seashore.
See, I'm looking out here. All of these rocks are covered with this rockweed.
And you'll notice that most of the rocks have the rockweed on the side hanging down, but that's a good habitat for it. It does fine there. This is also very uneven type of rock surface. People are not going to necessarily walk all over this rock, but you go over there and you'll see very little rockweed.
Because people are trampling it down.
And you know, One of the important things to try to understand for coastal managers is how things change, how they change over time. And we've been doing some work that shows that throughout Southern California, particularly in places where a lot of people are, that since the 50s, this rockweed has become less and less and less abundant. In some places, it's entirely gone.
Well, if the rockweed goes away, where are all these little invertebrates going to live?
That's a great question, because a lot of those invertebrates wind up not occurring in the abundances they were in the past.
So it's something as simple as you lose the rockweed, you lose the life.
Exactly. And what these folks are doing here is they're using this little frame, these sets of little frames inside this larger plot to count up the number of those little animals that are present.
Are there animals down in here now?
There's a couple of limpets. There's one there.
Wow.
And there's another one in here.
Wait a minute. Where? Right
there.
Here? Look at the size. You wouldn't even know that was alive.
Nope.
And look, here's the other one right over here. Now, some of these are so small, I don't even know how anybody would know they're there unless they knew what they were looking for.
Well, it takes a trained eye to see them.
So these are tiny, tiny, tiny little organisms.
They can range from, a couple centimeters to half a millimeter or so, or a millimeter.
All right, now show me something else. Is there another? Oh, now there's
a snail. It's the Mexican unicorn snail.
Wait a minute, you're picking him up.
I can pick him up. He's attached. Or we can leave him there.
Well, bring him on out. It's not going to hurt him?
No. See, now he'll protect himself by closing up his shell.
Wow. Look at that. Now, you're going to put him back in.
We'll put him back right where he came from.
And you're making a note of this in your...
We also measure them.
Okay. And will you come back to this exact same rock next year and see if what's going on?
The exact same spot. It's marked by places on the rock, so we put the plots back in the exact same place.
So if we really dissected the top of this rock, we would find, how many little things do you think we might find in there?
Well, in this one, dozens for sure.
Right here?
Yes.
Unseen by the human eye.
By some human eyes.
Now we've hit the jackpot. We've hooked up with a guy from State Fish and Game. Your name is?
Robin Lewis.
Okay, we're over here looking at a big rock full of their shells on the side.
Limpets. Limpets primarily.
Oh, these are the limpets.
These are the limpets. These are the big ones, I should say.
All right, now what is a limpet?
Kind of like an abalone, actually. I imagine everybody knows what an abalone is. A cousin to the abalone. It's a snail with one shell.
And what are you doing here? You counting them up, or?
Actually measuring them, but as we measure them, we simultaneously get the count that in a given area is what we're trying to capture that information from. So we just basically mark off a certain area that we want to track, and we go through and systematically locate and measure every one of the limpets that are in it.
So you're going to measure every limpet on this rock?
No, in a circle this size.
I got you.
Okay, but it's a pretty big circle when you draw this thing out.
And how are limpets doing in California?
Well, this particular limpet is a real interesting story, because owl limpets have been collected by people for food since the time the native peoples were here. And so we know from a lot of work that people tend to take larger limpets when they come down to the shore. And so when you get into areas where there are a lot of people, you find the owl limpet populations tend to be dominated by small individuals and not large ones. This is one of the real focal points of this marine network study that we're involved in here, because to really get a handle on limpet population structure, you have to learn this from many places, some of which have a lot of visitors and some of which don't. And so we're working a number of sites, some that have a lot of folks, some that don't, to work this out. There's something else really interesting about these owl limpets. They change sexes. So they start out life as males, and then as they get a little older and a little bigger, and my wife says a little smarter, they become females.
Well, that's bound to catch people's attention watching this program.
Now, what that means, though, is that if people are going to be taking these larger limpets selectively, they may also be having an impact on the male-female ratios. That's still not well worked out because there are other features that cause animals to change from male to female.
Wow, this is fascinating stuff.
This is a real interesting place because the Cabrillo Monument is a place that gets a lot of oversight. And so here you have really large owl limpets compared to other places where there's a lot of visitation.
These are called owl
limpets, O-W-L.
Owl limpets.
And they're actually called owl limpets because they're on the inside of the shell there's an owl-like head pattern.
So that's the inside of a limpet.
That's the inside of one.
And what do they taste like? Why are people taking them and eating them?
Well, they have a very large muscle that's the foot that holds them onto the rock, and you can see they have a pretty good area that they attach to. So when they're removed from the rock, they're taken out of the shell, and essentially the foot is what is eaten, just like in abalone. And you can cook them in various ways.
Let anybody know about this that's not eating them already, because the idea is we want to preserve these owl limpets.
That's what we would like to do. We would at least certainly like to be able to keep these larger animals and these natural side structures present.
Now this is a perfect example of how hidden things are here. I was looking over here at these two limpets, and I put my finger right over here, and look what happens. Look at that. This is a
sea anemone, and it closes up when it's touched or when it's out of the water. They close up like that for protection.
Look at that, and it just blends right in with the rock.
Yes, and in fact, all along those crevices,
here's one right here.
There's a large one, and
I can touch it, and it'll close right up. Look at that.
And even all along these crevices here, those are all sea anemones that are already closed up.
That are hidden behind little shells.
They coat shells on top for protection.
So right here, in this one little space right here, we've got all this life.
It's like a miniature tide pool on the rock.
We looked up in the sky, and look it up there. It looks like a big old weather balloon, but Mary, I have a feeling that balloon has something to do with the research that you all are doing out here on the shore.
That's right. This is a blimp, and actually there's a camera attached to the bottom of it, and it's taking pictures of the tide pools. So and this is a brand new technology. We haven't ever tried it for this purpose before.
So what are you going to do with those pictures? Are you getting a quadrant and doing the same thing that you were doing with the little cameras here?
What we're doing is we're tying in the data that we're using in the little plots with the whole site. This is how we figure out what's going on in the whole bigger area.
So when we look at these pictures, and you're going to get us copies of these to look at, we're going to see this whole area right here.
That's right, and we can actually, it can raise it up all the way about 300 feet up and take the whole site at once, or it can raise it down to very different levels, and so we can look in finer and finer detail.
And how much do you expect something to change from year to year?
Well, we actually see quite a few changes. When the El Niños came through here, we saw huge storms come through, and large rocks went out into the ocean, and boulders came down on the site, so we actually see a lot of changes.
So these pools of rock with the rocks, they are reconfigured by storms, by earthquakes, by just natural history, natural occurrences.
This is a very dynamic habitat.
Once you start looking for it, there is neat stuff to see everywhere. This beautiful, big, very bright green rock here.
And this tells us a story. The key idea of monitoring is to monitor change, and this tells us about some natural change that has occurred here. Apparently, a wave came in and turned this rock over, exposing fresh rock surface, and it quickly was covered by this weedy sea lettuce, giving this bright green. That's correct. That's correct.
Sea lettuce.
Sea lettuce. So we can tell something about what happened to this rock because we know that the sea lettuce comes in quickly in areas that are freshly exposed.
Now,
like
can I touch this? Is that okay? It's not hurting it?
No, it's just a thin carpet. And if this stays like this, it'll gradually change to other things later on. There's a succession of different species that will occur.
This feels like I'm touching carpet here or some soft material.
Yes.
It's got a great feel to it, and it's called sea lettuce.
Sea lettuce, that's correct.
I hate to walk through this in one way, but in another, it is so beautiful. It's like walking through a forest when you look down and see what's underneath us. It's spectacular.
It's very rich habitat, high diversity. We're looking at hundreds of species of different plants and animals in this area.
This has to be one of the best examples of tide pools anywhere in California.
It certainly is. In Southern California, this is one of the best areas, and it's amazing that people are able to come see it. We're right at low tide now, so we're perfect conditions.
Look at this right over here. You got the grass, and then you've got this open area over here that is just spectacular. It's full of... Now, I haven't seen many fish or any moving things.
The fish are here. They're just more secretive. And there's actually a special study ongoing here that are identifying the fishes that are found in the tide pools.
What a great day we have had. Thank all of you, for this introduction and education for all of us. These tide pools, which are all up and down our coast here in California, which really I think are underappreciated. Wouldn't you say that?
That's right. That's right. The people do realize when coming to areas like this how special they are, but we really need to get the word out even more.
And preserve them and protect them, monitor them.
And most importantly, enjoy them.
Enjoy them.
We find that if people come to the tide pools and they enjoy themselves, then eventually they'll learn to love it. And if they learn to love it, it turns to passion, and then maybe we stand a chance.
The passion turns to respect.
Yes, it does.
Because I'm sure not going to be tromping around in these boots. I'm going to be tiptoeing around, and I'm going to be opening my eyes like they've never been opened before in these tide pools, which are such fine examples of California's gold. They're here for all of us to enjoy. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed our tide pool adventure. They are very special places. And if you'd like to see this adventure again or share it with your family and friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library, it's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.